Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses and all of you who are here today for this critically important hearing. I'm going to ask some questions that may be a little bit different. When we talk about food and feeding people, most of us think in terms of raw foodstuffs, and I'd like to be more specific. In areas of famine, I've seen, and this goes back a few years, I don't know if this is still the case, the use of food supplements like Plumpy Nut. Is that still out there?
Therapeutic.
It's a winner, isn't it?
Super Plumpy Nut
and also rehydration therapies. Yeah. When we talk about food aid through your agencies and such, does it include these things?
Yes, sir. In fact, there's been a deliberate effort and a substantial improvement in not just calories, but the right calories and nutritional added value products. And that's one of the things that we're really working together more strategically than we were years ago.
When we hear about the increasing cost of local food producers, I think of how we might help them directly, but I also think indirectly. Are there microcredit programs that are part of your effort so that local farmers can borrow some money to get through the tough time?
Senator, we think that this is a very critical part of the success going forward, not nearly enough. One of the things that Congress has done in the last few years has given us more flexibility with funding. So we now do $2 billion in cash-based transfers, which puts liquidity into the local economies, which stimulates the local smallholder farmers. And we're also now buying internally, like for Africa, to stimulate farming operations in that regard as well as we're bringing, obviously, tremendous amount of quantity of commodities from the United States into the countries that are in great need. But these resilience programs are the long-term success. The charity is never going to be the final solution, as you well know. It's got to be, we've got to create an incentive such that you have water harvesting and all the things that you create the resilience. Because in many of these countries we're struggling with right now because of this shock from Ukraine, if we could go in with the right programs and scale them up, then they won't have these shocks like we're experiencing. And that'll save a lot of money, Senator.
May I add, Senator, in addition to microcredit, which can be difficult sometimes for agricultural producers to make the frequent payments it requires, we also have looked at things like microinsurance to kind of help protect against crop failures, things like different micro savings products to help them plan better. So comprehensive financial tools are part of the services that we offer.
We know that COVID...
Sorry, distinguished Senator, may I come in?
Sure.
Sorry to.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make quick points about what you said about the importance of malnutrition. We should make sure that in the interventions that we do, it's not just calories that matter. It's actually nutritious food that's also very, very important. So, because at the end of the day, if you have children that are stunted and they're not getting the right kind of nutrients, it affects actually the capacity of the brain to function well. So, what I call gray matter infrastructure. We've got to really build that into this. And one of the things that we will be supporting through this emergency food production plan is the whole area of biofortified foods. So what I highlight in maize, what I eat sorghum that is actually fortified with iron or beans and things like that are also fortified. It's very important. Our nutritional supplementation is important. Now, one thing I just wanted to say is how important these interventions are. We have a program that we're doing in the Sagota area, which is in Ethiopia, which is in the Tigray area. In fact, as bad as things were in that area, the percentage of kids that were actually stunted was as high as 50-60%. We brought it down to about 38% in a very short period of time. So these focused production things that are targeted with high nutrient foods does make the difference very quickly. And on the point of the microcredit that you said, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to what Senator Coons was saying. We've got to make sure the $5 billion that we're talking about here is used to also leverage financial institutions. Banks don't lend to agriculture in most cases because of high perceived risk. But when I was Minister of Agriculture, I got the banks in Nigeria to actually lend to agriculture, put together a $350 million risk guarantee facility for them if they lost their money. And we ran it. We leveraged over $3.5 billion from the banks into agriculture. And non-performing loans, less than 1%. So which means that the perceived risk is excessively high. And so we at the bank as part of our intervention, are looking into how we are going to use risk mitigating factors and risk guarantees to leverage the capital of the balance sheet of those banks, going to seed companies, fertilizer companies, logistics, and all of those actors in the agricultural value chain. This is very, very important.
Thank you, sir. I want to ask one last question if I can, and it relates to COVID-19. We all know the death toll in the United States has reached 1 million, maybe 6 million worldwide. The U.S. has developed very effective vaccines, but we have struggled to supply them to the rest of the world. Now we have a greater challenge in poor countries than just providing vaccine. We have weak health infrastructures in those countries, vaccine hesitancy, and other competing basic health demands. I remember my staff went to West Africa, and I asked him specifically to look at COVID-19 vaccine supplies. He reported a surplus of vaccines, but not enough demand. There is a hesitancy involved in it. There's a lack of infrastructure to deliver it, and that has to be part of our conversation. So it isn't just the value of the vaccine, it's taking with it the means of delivery. Can anyone on the panel comment on that aspect?
Senator, when most of the airline industry shut down during the height of COVID, the World Food Program stepped up and began delivering COVID supplies from PPE, testing equipment, ventilators, the whole 9 yards into 183 countries. So someone said that we were actually the world's largest operating airline at one time. That's something that you aren't really proud of, but when the airline industry shut down, we had to do what we needed to do. When it came to vaccines, we are prepared to step up and deliver and take advantage of our logistics supply chain because we're really very good at it, but we've really not been asked to do that much in the supply chain of vaccines. We've had a very little role in that.
I would like to echo that. NGO partners like Mercy Corps and our peers, we are your last mile partners. We are in these deep communities that are difficult to reach with deep, long-standing relationships. And we reached out several times kind of trying to get people to work with us to support that last mile delivery. And it just was not something that was taken up in a huge way.
Yeah. For Africa, if I'm a single senator, the issue with the vaccine hesitancy that you mentioned, yes, there is some truth to that. But I will not say that there are a surplus of vaccines in Africa. In fact, what happens is that it's not enough supply. We have even all of what's supposed to be delivered to Africa wasn't really delivered. It came late. Some of them were actually expired vaccines, so they couldn't really be, doses couldn't really be applied. And you have a situation in which, as developed countries actually had double doses, triple doses, and booster shots, Africa was just basically still struggling to have basic shots. So I do think that it is not necessarily correct to think that there is a surplus of vaccines in Africa. There is not a surplus of vaccines in Africa. There are structural issues that we must deal with in terms of making sure that we have the capacity to produce those vaccines in Africa. And also issues that have to do with intellectual property rights that can make sure some of those vaccines and antigens and things like that that are needed are actually available to the R&D systems in the local pharmaceutical and vaccine manufacturing industries. So in Africa right now, a lot is being done in terms of Johnson & Johnson in South Africa and many other places to set up vaccines manufacturing. And when they are setting up those vaccine manufacturing, it's because there is demand, but they're trying to deal with the problem of structural bottlenecks that have made it difficult for Africa to actually access the vaccines in the quantity, at the cost, and at the timing that is needed.
Thank you. We have votes on, so Senator Blunt and